to link up seamlessly to individuals who want to make presentations during that time or who wants to contribute to that very important conversation. So there will be an opportunity for that to happen. And there will also be plenary sessions where we bring everybody together in one big session. And at the end of the day, of each day, we'll be able to go back and reflect on some of the positive ideas that we have and find a way to really get this organized and really set up the way we want it. So, while this is being organized by the United Workers' Party and the Electoral Reform Coalition, it should not be viewed necessarily as a political thing. I believe you'll all agree with me that the economy is everybody's business. If our economy is prosperous and making money for everybody, everybody is happy and satisfied. If it is failing, it impacts every single person. So I do not want us to think that it is because we may be of a different political persuasion that should be an excuse not to participate. We welcome the participation by every single Dominican who has a contribution to make. We are planning for the future of our country. We are planning for a future that is sustainable because, as all of you are well aware, we are in the very final stages, it would seem, with regards to our CBI revenues. And now is the time for us to plan very seriously on the way forward. So again, the conference is on the 4th to the 6th. Our awards dinner will be having a small fee of just $250 for the dinner, but the conference itself will be free of charge for those who are willing and those who will be participating. Let me also add, and I'm sure that I want to address this concern even before I hand over to the representative from the ARC, I also want to stress that this is not just a talk shop. It is not just talking. But I think it is very important for us to plan, because you'll all agree that when you fail to plan, that is a guarantee of failure. And so we will be planning, we'll be taking those plans seriously. As you know, we are well poised for political change in this country. So when that happens, we'll be well prepared to move forward seamlessly with those plans to make Dominica a better place and to really build this economy. I would also like to add that this particular economic forum will be the start, or will be the prelude to another all-important forum, which will be an entrepreneurship forum, where we will focus on the hundreds, I believe, Dominicans who are already doing things, already producing, already manufacturing. They have small-scale industries. Some people are drying fish, and some people are making sauces. Some people are involved in the honey business. There are scores of these types of businesses that are operating right now on a very small scale. The idea would be to give them some exposure. The idea would be to explore avenues for them to be able to increase their sales regionally and also upscale the businesses. So that's a very important offshoot. We were trying to merge this into one, but we thought it's best to do it into two segments. So we'll have the formal, if you like, conversation, but the second part of it, which will be the entrepreneurship conference or networking, will really bring together all of those various entrepreneurs from across Dominica, all of those involved in doing creative things to advance themselves, advance their families, but we will be looking to see how best we can get those to the market and how best we can expand the scope of those businesses. So as you can tell, we are very serious about this. We believe that this is the way forward for Dominica. All of us working together, all of us planning together, and all of us succeeding together. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I am here representing the Electoral Reform Coalition. When Dr. Thompson Fontaine first announced the convening of a conference on tourism and agriculture in December last year, we in the Electoral Reform Coalition immediately contacted him and recommended an economic forum that would cover all sectors of the Dominican economy. The reason was obvious. All sectors of the Dominican economy, from healthcare to infrastructure, are experiencing severe difficulties, and we need an immediate intervention to give some guidance to the present trajectory of the development of the Commonwealth of Dominica. We in the Electoral Reform Coalition, ERC, are pleased to be associated with the political leader of the United Workers' Party, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, and the rest of the organizing committee of distinguished Dominicans who have come together to present the Dominica Economic Revival Summit from June 4th to 6th at the Jungle Bay Resort at Mount Akuma, Soufriere. The main objective of the summit is to begin the process of developing a master plan which will serve as a roadmap for Dominica's future development. As we approach the end of the first quarter of the 21st century, there is no doubt that Dominicans are disappointed with the present state of the economy. So for those who are curious in wondering what the link between electoral reform and an economic revival summit is, we in the ERC are very conscious of the fact that beyond electoral reform comes economic reform. In this regard, the ERC has embarked on a series of activities that we hope will accelerate the electoral reform process, and I'm pleased to inform you that the ERC had a very encouraging meeting with Her Excellency, the President of the Commonwealth of Dominica, on Monday, 22nd April 2024. More details will be given in a subsequent ERC communique. Let me take the opportunity to invite all Dominicans at home and abroad to participate and support the Economic Revival Summit 2024 at the Jungle Bay Resort on June 4th to 6th. The summit starts with an opening ceremony and an awards dinner in the evening of Tuesday, June 4th, and continues for the following 2 days. We want to assure everyone that this is not another talk shop, but a serious workshop, where a plan will be developed to move the Commonwealth of Dominica to economic prosperity. As an architect, I recognize the importance of planning. And Dr. Fontaine, I had written this when you said it. Planning, yeah. So as an architect, I recognize the importance of planning, and failure to plan is to plan to fail. I guess they see what those men from the East think the same way. So now is the time for all Dominicans to come together to start the process for economic revival of the nation. The alternative path to economic development of Waiti Kubuli is long overdue. May the good Lord shine the light of this nation on this nation and show us the way. We are capable of creating a prosperous nation for our children. The Dominica Economic Revival Summit 2024 at the Jungle Bay Resort on June 4th to 6th is the beginning of the start of such a process. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fontaine, and thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. Now we'll open the floor for any questions from the media that would be entertained succinctly.
Question?
Yes, please. Matt Peltier from Q95.
I think I missed the opening statement from Dr. Fontaine. Will the government of Dominica be invited to such an economic summit?
Yes, the answer, the quick answer to that is yes. As we've said publicly, this is about Dominica and about Dominicans. persons, we believe, within the government who can contribute to the success of it, who can contribute the ideas. We believe that the ideas on our development does not reside solely amongst us. There are those within government that we believe can make that contribution, and they will be invited to participate. We'll also be extending an invitation to the Prime Minister as a former Minister of Finance and to the existing Minister of Finance to also participate in the forum. I believe that we need, as Dominicans, to move past this very limited, looking at your own party concerns and begin to look at the broader picture of Dominica. We need every single Dominican to contribute to its development, and that's the position that will be adopted.
You said that you have invited them.
We will be. We are yes. The launch is the official start of it. In the next few days, we'll be enrolling the invitations to the various persons across the country. Yeah.
Who are your major contributors to that forum?
What we have done is that we have identified a number of individuals who are basically experts in the various areas. So we have experts in agriculture, experts in the manufacturing sector, experts in the knowledge industry. We will not be able to give you their names at this conference, but in the next few weeks we will be doing so. And the only reason why we are not able to do that is because some of them are still considering, some of them have not come back officially to us. So we'll wait until that is settled, and then we'll be able to reveal the names.
Are these people locals or Dominicans who reside overseas?
Yeah, we have a mix of both local presenters and at least two who will be coming from overseas to present.
These people, what about the business sector in Dominica? Have you reached out to them, or do you plan on reaching out to them? Because you talk about economic development, not about politics, but economic development, and certainly that's what you can do.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. We believe that our business sector is also key to this because when the economy is not doing well, they suffer, and obviously if the economy is doing well, they will benefit from it. So we will be inviting business places from not only from town but all over Dominica to be a part of it, either to be at the opening ceremony or to be present during the 2 days of the conference.
Dr. Fountain, with your experience as an economist, do you plan on lending your support to the government's otherwise in terms of boosting the economy, building the country, because we're talking about Dominica?
For the past, how many years has government have been in office? 24 years I've been offering my services. In that regard, I've always maintained that given my level of experience and training, that I would always have been willing to assist and to provide that level of advice. I have not been asked. It's been 24 years, so I don't think at this stage I will be. But if it happens, yeah, obviously. I mean, the way I view it is, at the end of the day, the economy is about serving all of Dominica. And that includes my own family. I have family here in Dominica, cousins, nieces, brothers, sisters, and so on. So if the economy is not doing well, I am personally impacted by that. So I think if there's any way I can contribute to a better economy in Dominica, I would. And in fact, this conference is because of this fact that we've seen that this government has been very reluctant to reach out across to individuals who have this potential, who are able to contribute in that way. That's one of the reasons why we are where we are. So I do not want to make the same mistake of excluding everybody and making the tent wide. I mean, there's room for everybody. There's room for all of us to participate in our own development, and that's what we intend to do.
Would that assistance, Mr. Fontaine, Dr. Fontaine, the assistance you mentioned, would that include sitting in the present government?
Curtis Smith, I don't know how to answer this. I don't think it will come to that, quite honestly. I don't think it will involve, and you don't have to be sitting in government to be able to contribute.
If asked to sit in government to make a contribution, would you oppose, would you accept?
Well, if I'm asked to make a contribution, I would accept. All right? I think that's the important thing.
Accept what, sitting in government?
No, accept to make a contribution.
No, if it includes sitting in government.
But it does not have to include that. I guess that's the point I'm saying. I'm saying that it does not have to include sitting in government. Because as you know, I'm the head of a political party. I'm the head of the largest opposition party in Dominica. We've never had the situation before where you've had this unification going forward, unless you're suggesting that that is within that context. If it's within the context of a unity setup or government of national unity, by all means, I certainly, but Curtis, at the end of the day, I think what is very, very important is, and I think what that shows on the part of those of us who are here and those of us who are planning this, is just the critical importance of putting the economy first, of really looking after the welfare of the people of Dominica. That, I think, has been neglected. Because if you take care of the economy, you take care of people's welfare, you take care of the scores of young people, you create jobs, you create better lives for people. And that, to me, is at the heart of what we are trying to push. And any way we can help to make that happen, we will.
Let me just ask Dr. Fontaine to provide sort of a synopsis of what the economy is like at this time.
The economy, as you know, Matt, it's not going very well. I mean, if you go on the street, just go outside and talk to any person. We've had a situation where we have not had any substantive wage increases, except for a few persons of late. The majority of public servants have not received a wage increase. We have a number of persons in Dominica who are working below. There's no really set minimum wage. A number of persons whose average incomes are probably $700-800 a month. So quite clearly, you have a lot of people who are not making a living wage. You have a number of persons in Dominica who are having difficulty making ends meet. And that, to me, is a sign of a really bad economy. Persons can't work 2 jobs, for example, because there's simply not enough jobs going around. The jobs that they have is not paying them enough. And there's just not enough activity taking place. And one of the major reasons for that is that we have stopped exporting. Our exports in Dominica is about $5 million, when we used to be in the range of $200 million a year. So imagine how far we've come. So we are not necessarily bringing in new monies into Dominica, and that is really stifling any kind of progress that we've seen. And I mean, our people are really suffering. There's no doubt about it, and that is because the economy is not doing well, and it has been in that state for a very long time.
Well, given figures presented by the IMF recently, they seem to paint a bright picture, if you will, optimistic picture in the economy. I mean, you're a former IMF worker. What, vis-a-vis what is presented by the IMF, what would you say?
I think it's probably not really understanding by the public what exactly those figures mean. The fact that the IMF announced a growth rate of 4.5% last year does not mean that the economy is doing good. What it means is that in 2019, the economy fell by 19%. And once you have this major fall, then the economy in the years after that, it has to recover. It has to catch up to where it is. We still have not caught up. It will take us another year or two to get us back to the level that we were in 2019. So imagine where we were in 2019. We were not in a very good place. And imagine where we are now. We're in an even worse place, notwithstanding those growths that we're talking about. And as I've explained on different media before, it's just a matter of how the calculations are done. But just for the people to understand is that once you have a major fall, as we had in 2019, then the economy will recover from that bottom position. And it's that recovery that will, for a few years, register some higher growth than ordinary. But once that is reached, once it gets back to that level that it was in 2019, then we go back to the growth rates of 1%, less than 1% into the future. Because nothing substantive has happened in this economy. The major 2019 with the pandemic, with the COVID pandemic. Yes. And we have a situation where we have a lot of construction that is going on, but that's not necessarily beneficial to Dominicans and Dominica. Probably 80-90% of what the construction sector is now contributing is not being contributed to Dominica, it is being contributed to foreigners. So it is not helping us, if you like. Normally, if you have those major construction projects, I mean, I'm old enough, and I'm sure you guys are as well, to remember in the 1980s, when you had a major road construction effort in Dominica, repairing the roads. Locals, they only had a few individuals who were managers, probably a few managers, but the majority, 95% of the workers on those projects were Dominicans. And at that time, there was a significant boost to the Dominican economy. There's no such boost from this particular construction boom that we are seeing now because of the way, which is really a wrong-headed way. I think the government made a serious mistake in using our resources to employ foreigners. That should never happen. You know, you have to use your resources to develop your people and your country. And I take a lot of difference. I really object very strongly to that approach. I believe it is wrong. I believe it is not serving the people of the country right, and that you can use the country's resources. I mean, we're talking about revenues generated by the CBI program. That should be used to advance the welfare of the Dominican public, and it has not been done. And I'm very concerned about this. I think that this government has done it wrong. If they were going to negotiate, if they say we don't have the skills to build an airport, you negotiate with a firm from overseas, but ensure that that firm hires local workers, hires local dump truck drivers, heavy equipment operators, truckers. That is what you're supposed to do as a responsible government. And that has not been done. That was not done.
Okay, Dr. Fontaine, you. Yes, Dr. Fontaine, you mentioned two presenters who will be coming from overseas. Do you wish to mention the names?
Okay, again, they have not really confirmed, but one of them, I can tell you, is he's now working with the Department of Energy. In fact, he's working on a very special project in the United States, in Washington, D.C. He's working on a project for renewable energy for the Energy Department in the United States. He's been called, he was here in Dominica, he was called to the United States to help them in that area of renewable energy. So he's an excellent person that will be contributing. I can tell you his name. His name is Dexter Newton. He's an engineer in that area of renewables, and I think he's an excellent fit to help us kind of think through our renewable energy process going forward. So he'll be one of those individuals.
Dr. Fontaine, do you think that that program you're having is going to reinvent the wheel? In other words, is there a plan for the development of government is developing?
Well, the problem is if there is a plan, we are not seeing the impact of it, because at the end of the day, as I just explained to Matt, we are seeing a situation where the economy is not doing well at all. I mean, under no type of metric you can use can you say that this economy is doing well. So if there is a plan being implemented, then it is not working. So it's not so much reinventing the wheel, but it's more or less fine-tuning. For example, I think there are some areas that we can really go heavily into, like the knowledge-based industry. We can put our young people to work doing a lot of outsourcing for businesses overseas, where they can sit at home in Dominica, be on their computers, using our infrastructure of communications and our internet and so on, to contribute to what businesses overseas. There's a lot of opportunities in that area. The outsourcing type of industry that is linked very heavily to the internet and to creating invoices for firms. There's a lot of work like that that's available that we can tap into. We have not tapped into. Our agriculture sector, for example, that has been neglected. That's another area that can be developed to the point where we can actually add value with our agro-processing. Our water industries has not been exploited, is not exploited. Every day, hundreds of thousands of tons of water rushes into the sea. It's just been wasted, and that can be converted to money. Our neighbors in the Caribbean are starved of water. Antigua, Barbuda, Saba, St. Martin, these are countries that we can look to get in our water into. So there is just so much that we've not done. So it's not so much that we're inventing the wheel, it's a matter of trying to emphasize the areas where we can begin to see growth, we can begin to see a generation of jobs and opportunities for our people.
Dr. Fontaine, what would be the immediate plans of a UWP government to revive this economy? If you were to be in power, let's say the next year, what would be the immediate plans to grow and revive this economy?
All right. The number one thing that we would do immediately would be to revitalize the agriculture sector. We would immediately put a large amount of resources, even if it means having to borrow to do that, but you put a substantive amount of resources into the agriculture sector. Why you want to do that is because if you're building a house, you have to start with a firm foundation. And the foundation for any kind of economic activity in Dominica is the agriculture sector. One of the reasons is that it's not so much, when we talk agriculture, persons think of getting wet in the fields or been bitten by red ants and so on. That's not necessarily what we're talking about. In today's agriculture, that is done smart, that is done well, you can add so much value through agro-processing. There are people waiting to get our produce in the different islands. You can go the organic route, but it will take a substantive investment in, for example, we're planting coconut, planting citrus, but short-term there's a lot that you can do, or essential oil industry. So the number one thing would be to revive the agriculture sector. The second thing would be to find avenues for our young people. And that is where I talked about the knowledge industry. That's an area I believe that can really do a lot to sustain Dominica and sustain Dominicans, especially our young people. That's number two. And the third one is the renewable sector. Being able to really move beyond talking about using our geothermal or using our sun or wind and so on, but harnessing that in such a way that you have cheaper electricity that will drive the manufacturing that we're talking about, that will drive the use of our water resources. I think if we focus on those three areas, we can move Dominica from a position of very, very negligible growth right now to 5-6% in a relatively short space of time.
Don't you think something like tourism, for example, should be part of a plan to grow the economy?
Tourism is, but I talked about the three main ones. I mean, we will have like five because we're talking about the immediate things. The tourism product, obviously, it will be helped by the international airport. So once we have an international airport, that will help a lot to develop our stay-over visitors. Dominica offers a lot by way of the tourism product that needs to be developed. Yeah, certainly tourism is part of it as well. So to all the services that I've not spoken, I think we can do a lot in financial services, even banking services, insurance services, and so on. But I wanted to kind of focus on the three major areas that I believe that have been neglected, that as the government coming into office, we want to immediately tackle to move Dominica forward.
Somebody just asked a question there, by telephone. In terms of transportation to and from the island is a key component. Will this matter be looked into as part of the thrust? Yeah?
Yes, Matt, I think one of the biggest issues that we have is the cost of transportation between the islands. I was just in Antigua for 2 days. It cost me over $2,000 for a ticket to go to Antigua and come back.
Right there.
Just there, and it, as you go up, you come down. I mean, it's that close, But so there is a problem in the region that needs to be tackled, that needs to be solved, and I think a lot of it has to do with how we can provide incentives to some of those airlines to operate. I don't believe it is the role of government to get into aviation. I think that's an area that should be left to the purview of the private sector. They have done it well in a lot of countries, and I think they can do it well. But we need to offer incentives, and a big part of these high tariffs that we have is because of government taxes. So, for example, in countries where governments don't impose income tax, like Antigua, they impose taxes on aviation, on flying, and so on. That makes it a lot more expensive. So that's one area you want to look at. You want to see if you can review this tax regime imposed on flying by governments that could actually help to reduce it. Because I believe a lot more can be done for interregional travel and trade that will allow, if you're able to reduce on the cost of flying, that people can actually go more to those islands and so on. But that is something that I believe in developing a tourism plan, you would certainly want to do. You certainly want to be able to do that, but focusing on getting those prices down.
As you spoke to Curtis a minute ago, I think I underlined one point that he made as it relates to the international airport, meaning that you expect the international airport maybe shortly. Are you one supporting the new trust of the international airport, sir? Well,
I'm not sure what it means by the new thrust, but if there's an international airport being built, I welcome it.
Do you expect it to become a reality?
Well, it's not for me to say. I mean, what I'm saying is that if it happens, I will applaud it. I'm very happy. But as to whether it will or will not, I'm not in a position to determine that. But what I would say is that we need an international airport in Dominica, and that is something our government would support because it will go a long way to helping develop the tourism product.
Dr. Fontaine, the Citizenship by Investment Program, what would be the plans of Dr. Fontaine for that program, the CBI?
My own sense, Curtis, is that the CBI is on its last is on its last legs. And the reason why I say that is that even within the European Union, countries have been forced to shut their program down. Just about a month ago, Spain shut its program down completely, where they were offering a similar type of program like us in Dominica, which tells me that there is continuing pressure from the European Union and countries to really put an end to that, what they call the golden visa process. I do not believe that a country's development should be factored solely on one major thing. And that's the reason why I outlined to you 3 major areas we would focus on immediately as a government, and the CBI was not one of them. Because one, I don't think it is sustainable, and two, most likely by the time we get there, it will be finished. It is very hard to see the CBI program going beyond where it is now. Already we know that there has been a serious cutback. In the IMF report, you saw that there was a 52% reduction in CBI revenue flows coming into the funds here in Dominica. So it is clear to me that the CBI is on its way down. So in any kind of future development prospect, we will not be necessarily looking to CBI. Our planning will be looking to how do you make up for this lost revenue, bearing in mind that some 65% of the government revenues that it uses to pay public servants, to meet its services and so on, comes from the CBI program.
Yeah, Dr. Fontaine, let's suppose, as you said, if you come to office, the CBI remains as is. What approach would you take?
My approach would be to see how it better. Well, number one, make sure all the monies come back to Dominica. That's very important.
Which one is better?
Whatever monies that are out there that has not been accounted for, make sure it comes back into Dominica. That's the number one focus at the very start. Beyond ensuring that that is done, any future revenue streams will be coming into the consolidated fund, very, very importantly. And on that note, I just want to add as well that we're in the process of taking this matter to court as well. We are in the process of prosecuting the matter of this missing CBI money and having the government account for it. So we're taking very strong legal action in that regard because we think that is important, that there be an accounting for those revenues. So
to take this matter to court, Dr. Fontaine, to take this matter to court, would you not have to have information, concrete information that money is missing?
Right. So
you have that information at hand?
So that is what the courts will do. But it's a very easy math. You can multiply the number of passports times 100,000, minus half of it, and you're still not getting the amount of money that's coming in. Even if it's rough math, so it is clear that there is something wrong. So, but what the courts will do is that, and I'll allow Ronald to talk a little further to that, what the courts will do is that it will be able to force the government to provide that information. What we are not able to now do, you can get through court action. So that's basically what we are doing. But to your larger question, though, with regard to the CBI, as I said, we will be planning post-CBI. We'll be planning for a situation where we believe that the streams are coming down and they're not likely to rise. One of the things you'll also realize, the 4 countries, Antigua, St. Kitts, Dominica, and Grenada, they all agreed to have one fee. And that meant an increase for Dominica, an increase of its fees. Dominica was able to benefit a lot because it was selling much cheaper than the other countries. But once you begin to compete with Antigua, St. Kitts, and given where they are in the development, Dominica becomes a natural loser. I think that the St. Kitts program has been hugely successful because of what it offers the investors. It's because of the way it is run. And persons who are conscious of how the monies are spent, how the monies are used, they're going to see how the governments have been operating. And one thing it will be clear, our government has not been anywhere close to what we've seen in Antigua, what we've seen in St. Kitts and so on. So I think that will make it more difficult for our CBI program, more difficult to continue to see any kind of returns from it. So the planning for the end of CBI has to start now. It has to start now. It must start now.
Two questions, Dr. Fontaine. Earlier on you mentioned about construction industry. See construction, but it doesn't seem to be benefiting our locals. Can you break it down a little bit? What areas really concern you in the construction sector? And the number two, we live in a hurricane-prone country, and every time there seems to be a disaster in Dominica, monies have to be used locally to put the country back on its feet, because countries promise that donors promise they will give, and sometimes they never give. What are your plans should there be a major disaster in Dominica?
No, in any kind of planning, you must factor that in, because every year there is a 50% chance that we'll be hit by a major hurricane. So that's a risk that is with us every single year. So any kind of planning into the future must take that into account. One of the ways that you plan against this is that you try to mitigate those losses, and there are different ways that you can do that. For example, there is one thing that we've been discussing with the United Nations people, and that is, for countries like ours, can we convert our debt to climate resilience? So you could have a program where, in exchange for debt relief, you can use those monies to position the country against or to prevent those major disasters. Not to prevent them, but to prevent the impact. So, like, for example, the building of seawalls, the strengthening the construction code, for example, shoring up the hillside so that you can reduce the risk of landslides. You can put money into those areas that can mitigate against the losses that the country suffer. And also you can use that to insure crops, for example, so that farmers have insurance for their crops, so that as soon as the insurance passes, they can then retrieve those insurances and rebuild right away. So there are ways that this can be done, and certainly planning must be in that regard. With regards to the construction question, I've always found it strange, and again, I have nothing against the Chinese. I want to be very clear about that. It's not about the Chinese, it's about our government policy. Because in other Caribbean countries, even where the Chinese operate, the government ensures that there is a minimum amount of local participation. And as early as when this building was going up there, the government building, the president's building was going up, and there was a 27 million loan that was taken from Dominica to give to the Chinese, I made the point that the government should be negotiating to ensure that there is participation of our local contractors. And the other thing is the whole question of passing on knowledge as well. You know, it's a good way for them to learn new skills. The Chinese probably come in with new building skills and so on. They can learn, they can, you know. So we have to do that. The government has to ensure that they do it. You will agree that with the airport, with the construction of the airport, with the construction of a lot of the housing schemes that the government has around the country, a lot of that is because you will see that it's been built by the Chinese and not by locals. Locals are there in very token numbers. That should not be. A United Workers' Party government will ensure and insist that the majority of workers, as long as it is Dominica's money that is being used, that the majority, as much as 90% of the workers, must be. If we do not have the knowledge locally, we'll get it, but the workers, the heavy construction operators, the truckers, the dumpster drivers, all of those are going to have to be from here. And if you don't have local Dominicans, then you look from outside. But you have to look after the welfare and the interests of the people first and foremost. And I'm not satisfied that the way the construction is happening over the past 3 years. I mean, look at the building of the schools, the building of the Goodwill Primary School, the building of the Tebow Primary School, the building of the Calibishi Primary School. All of these have been contracted to the Chinese with very little sight of Dominicans being at the front and center. And if you look around Roseau, all of our major construction around town was built by Dominicans and Dominican contractors. So I don't understand, all of a sudden we've lost that. We've lost the ability of our own people to build. I don't think so. I think it's just a misplaced policy by this government. And I don't see any reason for it. Because as I said, the Chinese operate in other countries and the governments have negotiated successfully for local involvement. But our government has simply not done so for whatever, I don't know why. Why would the government not, probably Ronald can help me out with that, why a government would not look after the interests of its people, first and foremost. Yeah.
So that is some help, Dr. Fontaine.
Yes.
You mentioned that this is not another contract. Why wouldn't you be another contract?
It's not because it will form the basis of the planning for the new government going forward. That is what it's going to be. So that's why we are saying it's going to be actionable. And that's the other reason why we have this other component of the entrepreneurship linked to it. Because we want to be very practical in terms of how do we help our own local persons who are already involved in manufacturing, those who are already involved in small cottage industries, how do we help them? So it has two aspects to it. This very hands-on way to help our local people, but also the planning that will have to go into any new government will come out of that workshop, out of that summit.
Which new government are you referring to? You said the new government will take.
Yes, the new government that is coming after this one leaves.
When is that? When is that ready?
Well, elections, whenever elections are held, we expect a new government. Yes.
All right, Dr. Fontaine, I have two questions here from my live feed and one from myself. The first question from that feed being, can Dr. Thompson Fontaine give at least two areas where the economy can improve, like ASA? All right, in the short term. I think you referred to some of that already, but just to refer to that person's question. And Marva Telemark writes, are there plans to establish a support networks and resources, particularly geared to assist our young entrepreneurs and women in accessing opportunities after the summit? So these are the two questions on the line.
Okay, let me answer the second question first, having to do with the assistance, and that is where I believe the diaspora comes in. One way we can do that is that we can actually float. You can have some kind of a fund that floats bonds to the diaspora in particular. So persons who are really interested in helping develop small businesses here in Dominica, you can have a fund that is independently managed, but that will offer returns. So the way it is, if I am interested in supporting Dominica, I can buy into this, I can get bonds in that corporation, and then this corporation turns around and helps to develop those local businesses. Those local businesses then pay back into this corporation, and then pay back interest or whatever it is on those bonds. So there is a way to do it. That is something that we're thinking of setting up that will help, because I know that there are a number of persons in the diaspora who are really looking forward to assisting in that process, so that it does not just become a talk shop, that it really becomes something practical that helps people, especially, as you said, women. Most of the small businesses I spoke about is being led by women. Women in the bee industry, women in bottling of these very exotic drinks and so on. Our Kalinago people making these exotic baskets and weaves and so on. That these are areas that I think we can help if we have that kind of networking, that kind of organization. So let me just put the diaspora on notice. We'll be coming to you to be able to assist in that process, because we believe that that's one very practical way in which we can put our monies where our mouths are and really help the development that we're talking about. The other question having to do with the two areas that we could look at immediately. One of the areas immediately, the revival of the agriculture sector. To me, that is an area that we can do right away. A lot of produce takes a few weeks to get done. When in 2016 I was involved in doing business in Martinique, they were constantly asking for Dominica produce. They could take everything. They wanted celery, they wanted side, they wanted everything that you can think of, they wanted at good prices. So immediately we can have a ready input while we develop. Down the line, we develop it. Another area is our water industries. We can have 2 free water factories in Dominica set up in a few months. That is exporting water all over the world, employing persons in good paying jobs. So these are just 2 areas I can think of just right away that we can invest in. We can do that, will create that kind of activity. And of course, again, the knowledge industry. There are opportunities waiting to put young Dominicans to work that will do what they like, be online, but making a living out of it.
My question to the head table is that the economic summit that is coming up in June, based on what was said earlier, I got the impression that it deals with more or less of the macro aspects to the economy, revitalizing certain sectors and stuff like that. My question is, would that summit sort of speak to the ordinary man on the street? Those persons are struggling to make ends meet, in order to motivate, inspire, give them hope as to what you guys are saying on those 2 days will be actually done, as Curtis pointed out, when the government changes. Words to action, sort of that transition. How can offer hope?
Let me, first of all, before I answer your question, Mr. Duran. I want to piggyback on Curtis Matthew sitting in government policy. And he asked the political leader whether or not he would wish to sit alongside the government. But I think what Curtis really meant is that the political leader will be sitting in government permanently. So there is no need. He was just trying to put that out there. Also, one of the media persons spoke about whether or not it's a talk shop. I don't think it is. What it is that we have a government that has not held on to the policies that they've been preaching. So over the past 24 years, 25 years, it's an issue of just talk. We are not seeing nothing happening. You now have a system going to be put in place, or one would say the new government that is headed by Dr. Thompson Fontaine, who we all can see, he's traveling around the world and he's fixing every economy. I don't think he can have a problem in fixing a $60,000 or 60,000 population economy, and he can fix one with 10 million, and I think some of them may be touching the billions. But this is the reason why we say this cannot be a talk shop, and that is why this economic revival summit is about telling people that we're ready to work. Now, as it relates to the persons who we want to reach on the ground, while they are on the ground today, they are aware of the circumstances that they face on a daily basis and for a long time. They are aware what they have in their fridges. They are aware of the water bill that is about to hit them. Are they able to pay for it? And are they going to remain in this position for years to come without a change in their minds as to the problem is the policy of the government is not working with the grassroots back? And that is why, with the leadership of Dr. Thompson Fontaine, we're going to see that happening. And we will tell the grassroots man, listen to the summit, tune into the radio, watch the WhatsApp, check out the Facebook. Electoral reform is coming. It's not coming under this incumbent conditions, but it's going to come for the people of Dominica. And when it comes, I'm sure that what Curtis Matthew predicts will happen. Dr. Fontaine will be sitting in government, and it will no longer be a talk shop.
Question there, of course, coming from the people outside that may be listening or are listening. The banking system, how will you address it? Someone states that the euro currency is not easily accepted by our banks at this time, and we're sitting between two euro countries, Martin and Portugal. The second question is our health system. How do we address the failing health system?
Okay, on the euro currency, I was not aware that there was a problem with the exchange. I know that sometimes you have to convert first to US and then to from euro to US and then back to the EC, which makes it very difficult in the sense that you lose a lot in the transactions. So if, for example, somebody in the United States sending a euro into Dominica, it gets converted to the US, and then the US gets converted to EC, and then you lose quite a bit on it. I think that's the difficulty that the person is probably speaking about. Part of the problem is that when you don't have enough trade, because for you to have that ease of trade, it means that you must have the availability of that currency. All right, and I think a lot of that probably speaks to likely shortages within the system, because you don't have as much trade going on with the French countries. The more trade you have is the more availability of that currency you have. Because if, for example, we are selling to Martinique, then they'll be paying in euros. That will be available for the pool here. So I think that's probably what the issue is. And obviously, on the wider question of banking, there is an obvious need for more banking, not less, not more banking, but more banking, because the more competition you have is the better for the consumer, is the better for the clients. And we used to have 6 commercial banks, we're now down to 2. So it shows that there is room for gain and expansion of our commercial banking. And the other question was what?
Health.
Yes, the health sector. Boy, You know, let me just say and let me just express condolences to the family of Nurse Tracy. Mm-hmm. I think the latest person to have suffered, allegedly suffered an untimely death going through our health system. And it happens a lot and probably too often, which tells me that there may be something wrong with the system and probably a closer way of dealing, a better way of dealing with it. One of the issues is obviously resources, having the right equipment, having the right personnel, having the right training. All of that has to be looked at. I think the issue of having an insurance scheme is probably something that is very important so that people pay up to it. We all know that health is a very expensive issue. When, for example, a Dominican goes to Martinique or Guadeloupe for treatment, they have to end up paying hundreds or sometimes of euros. It's a very expensive thing, but yet we're expecting Dominica not to pay too much. The money has to come from somewhere, and I think the more logical thing would be probably to have a kind of a national insurance system that provides the resources, but at the same time provides the care, so that when everybody contributes, all of us, those who are healthy, will contribute towards that system, so that when the people need the care, that they will get it. So I think what we need is really a rethinking of our health system, the way it is structured, the way it is organized. What is clear is that now it is not working. Too many people are dying. Too many people are losing their lives over what many consider to be routine processes that probably should not be happening in our hospital system.
Yeah, I think we will just, thank you. Okay, we will just entertain probably one more question. If from the media, I know that you all have a lot of questions, but we had a time limit to this press conference. And of course, if there are no more questions, I'm not sure.
Can I ask something to do? There's one more question away from what we're discussing now.
Which is question. Before you are you going to attend the
recent court ruling in Dominica this week that has been making the rounds? Can you answer that, Dr. Fontaine?
You're giving me the mic.
the lawyers gave me the mic, so I worry about that. All I'll say is that there is a process through which we go through this lawmaking and law, and I cannot comment adversely on a decision of the court. I believe this is a complicated issue only because it involves morality questions, it involves legal issues, but that's why it is decided within the court system. I think that is where it should be decided. People will have differing opinions, and a lot of it will be based on their faith, on the way they view life, and so on. So it is not for me to judge one way or the other. You have to have enough faith in the court system, in the legal system, and there is a process through which cases are appealed. They are won at one level, they appeal to the next level, they get overthrown at that higher level. So I think it's just allowing the courts to work its way through. And, when you think of it, there are lots of things that we've had on our books over the years that probably we have to start taking a closer look at, not only in this particular case, but other issues that have been in the books. The question, for example, of incitement. That's an 18-something law that's still on our books that have people like me in trouble, even today. So there's a lot of things, I think, a lot of different pieces of legislation I think we need to begin to look at that may be a bit archaic and probably need some review in our court system. But at the end of the day, we have to respect whatever the court does, and there is a process through which, if we don't agree, it can be appealed to.
Curtis, if I were to add a little bit of it, I think from a legal perspective, I think Dr. Thompson have said it right, from a legal perspective, it has always been seen that the court, when you hear about Parliament makes law, but you can also say that the court makes law, and as a people, when the court pronounces certain aspects of it, like what we are faced with, it is what it is, all right? But we must not move away from this is like almost of an individual perspective of how persons want to to operate in society. You cannot be in society and fail to give that other person their opportunities to be who they want to be, even if you share a certain religious and or moral perspective on the issue. But we must learn to live together, notwithstanding if we may like it or not. So it's a ticklish area, but the world seems to be going around in circles as it relates to certain issues. We as a small developing country, we will be faced with those kind of predicaments, and we have to learn to deal with it as a people. Personally, I will say straight, this is not something I will support per se. But I think society, when we have to put the community aspect of it, of course, I will learn to live and work with everybody because I believe it's important.
Okay.
Yes, so any more questions? Okay, yes, that is about it. We will now call on Mr. George to just give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Thank you to Dr. Fountain and Mr. Mackenzie for gracing us with their presence here this afternoon, and also and particularly members of the media present here with us. We thank you for the number of questions that you asked. We look forward to your participation in the 3-day lunch economic summit at Jungle Bay. And we look forward to you rolling up your sleeves, actually rolling up your sleeves and working with us to make Dominica a better country for all of us to live in. We thank you for your presence, and may God bless all of us.
This was the United Workers' Party and Electoral Reform Coalition Press Lunch. Thanks for joining us.